Bob Ross became one of the most recognizable and comforting figures in television history, not because he was loud or dramatic, but because he was calm, gentle, and reassuring. For millions of viewers, his soft voice and slow brushstrokes turned stressful days into peaceful moments. Sitting in front of the television, people felt like Bob was speaking directly to them, guiding them patiently through a painting while reminding them that mistakes were not failures but happy accidents. His world felt safe, quiet, and welcoming. Trees were friendly, clouds were soft, and even dark colors were never threatening. Bob Ross made art feel possible for everyone, even those who had never touched a brush before. However, behind this calming public image was a life filled with hard work, discipline, personal loss, and later, deep conflict over his legacy. While viewers saw only peace and kindness, Bob's life was shaped by years of military service, physical injury, financial struggle, and business challenges that followed him even after death. His gentle personality was not something he was born with, but something he consciously chose. Bob once explained that during his time in the military, he was known for being strict and loud, the kind of person who ordered others around. When he left that life behind, he promised himself he would never raise his voice again. That promise became the foundation of the calm painter the world came to know. Yet, as much as Bob Ross belonged to public, much of his real life remained hidden. His family, relationships, business agreements, and personal struggles were rarely discussed openly. After his death, many fans were surprised to learn how complicated his story truly was. The man who taught happiness through paint left behind unanswered questions, legal battles, and a legacy that others would control. His calm image survived, but the truth behind it was far more complex than anyone imagined while watching him paint happy little trees on Sunday afternoons. Bob Ross was born Robert Norman Ross on October 29, 1942, in Daytona Beach, Florida, and raised in Orlando. He grew up in a working-class family, where money was limited and hard work was expected. His father, Jack Ross, worked as a carpenter, and Bob often helped him on job sites from a young age. His mother, Ollie Ross, worked as a waitress and supported the family in practical ways. Bob was never known as a strong student in school, and traditional education did not suit him well. Instead, he felt more comfortable working with his hands and spending time outdoors. One of the most important parts of his childhood was his deep love for animals. Bob regularly rescued injured wildlife, including squirrels, birds, snakes, and other animals most people would avoid. This compassion followed him throughout his life. Even later, when he became famous, he often brought animals onto his television set or filmed them around his home. One rescued squirrel became especially famous and appeared in multiple episodes of The Joy of Painting. Bob's kindness toward animals was not an act for television. It was simply who he was. As a teenager, Bob dropped out of school during the 9th grade and began working full-time with his father as a carpenter. During one job accident, he lost part of his left index finger. While this could have ended any hopes of becoming an artist, Bob adapted and later learned to hold a paint palette in a way that worked for him. This early injury became a symbol of his ability to adjust and move forward rather than give up. Bob also had a half-brother, Jim, whom he mentioned occasionally but kept mostly out of the public eye. Family mattered to Bob, but he valued privacy deeply. Even as his fame grew, he rarely shared personal details. These early years shaped his love for nature, his quiet personality, and his belief that peace could be created even in difficult circumstances. Long before he ever held a paintbrush on television, Bob Ross was already building the values that would define his life, and at the age of 18, Bob Ross joined the United States Air Force in 1961. He trained as a medical records technician and eventually rose through the ranks to become a master sergeant. He served as the first sergeant of a clinic at Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska, a position that required authority, discipline, and firmness. During this time, Bob was known for being strict and demanding, very different from the calm man viewers would later see on television. Military life taught him structure and efficiency, but it also left him feeling disconnected from the person he wanted to be. While stationed in Alaska, Bob experienced vast snowy mountains, frozen lakes, and untouched wilderness for the first time. These scenes left a lasting impression on him, and later became the most common subjects of his paintings. During short breaks from his military duties, Bob began experimenting with painting as a hobby. He wanted a creative outlet that allowed him to escape the stress of his job. Painting gave him peace in a way nothing else had. Over time, he realized that he could paint quickly, which became an important skill later in his career. Despite his success in the military, Bob knew he did not want to live his entire life shouting orders or enforcing rules. As his service years came to an end, he made a personal promise that once he left the Air Force, he would never raise his voice again. This decision was not small. It represented a complete change in how he wanted to exist in the world. When Bob retired from the military in 1981, he walked away from a stable career to follow a path filled with uncertainty. That choice required courage. The calm, gentle Bob Ross the world came to love was not accidental. It was a result of deliberate change, shaped by years of strict discipline and a desire to create peace instead of pressure. His military past explained both his work ethic and his need for calm. It was a foundation upon which everything else was built. While still in Alaska, Bob Ross joined an art class at the Anchorage USO Club. Although he enjoyed painting, he quickly became frustrated with traditional teaching methods that focused on theory rather than clear instruction. Bob wanted simple steps and practical guidance. His breakthrough came when he discovered the magic of oil painting, a television show hosted by German artist Bill Alexander. Alexander used a technique known as wet on wet, or alla prima, which allowed artists to complete a full oil painting in a short amount of time. Bob became fascinated by this method. He studied it carefully, practiced constantly, and taught himself to master it. He began painting Alaskan landscapes on novelty gold mining pans and selling them to tourists. To his surprise, they sold very well. Soon, Bob realized he was earning more money from painting than from his military job. This realization pushed him to make a life-changing decision. In 1981, he retired from the Air Force and committed fully to art. Bob later studied directly under Bill Alexander and joined the Alexander Magic Art Supplies Company as a traveling instructor. While teaching across the country, Bob met Annette Kowalski, who immediately recognized his natural ability to connect with people. She believed Bob could succeed on his own and encouraged him to start an independent business. Bob, his wife Annette, and Annette's husband Walt pooled their savings to form Bob Ross Incorporated. The early years were difficult, with little money and constant travel. Even Bob's iconic curly hair began as a cost-saving choice when haircuts became too expensive. Although he disliked the hairstyle, it eventually became part of his brand. In 1982, a small television station aired a taped art lesson as a test program. The response was far stronger than expected. Within a year, dozens of PBS stations picked up the show, and Bob Ross was on his way to becoming a national figure. The Joy of Painting officially premiered in 1983 and ran until 1994, producing hundreds of episodes that continued to air long after production ended. Each episode followed a simple, calming structure. Bob painted an entire landscape in under 30 minutes while explaining each step in clear, easy words. He worked without sketches, creating scenes from imagination while encouraging viewers to trust themselves. Bob never rushed, never judged, and never made painting feel exclusive. His gentle voice and slow pace became just as important as the artwork itself. Critics later compared him to Fred Rogers, noting how both men used kindness and calm to connect with audiences. Bob did not receive direct payment from PBS. Instead, income came from instructional books, videotapes, and art supplies connected to the show. With the help of Annette and Walt Kowalski, Bob Ross Incorporated grew into a multi-million-dollar business. Despite this growth, Bob remained focused on his values. He continued caring for animals, avoided flashy lifestyles, and stayed deeply private. Over his lifetime, Bob created an estimated 30,000 paintings. Yet surprisingly, very few were available on the open market. Many were kept by the company or used for instruction. When original paintings did appear for sale, they often reached high prices, driven more by emotional connection than traditional art value. Bob never wanted his work to become a financial investment tool. He wanted it to bring comfort, not competition. This philosophy made him beloved by everyday viewers rather than elite collectors. As the show reached international audiences, Bob Ross became a symbol of calm creativity across cultures. His influence extended far beyond painting. touching people who had never picked up a brush but found peace simply by listening to his voice. Bob Ross's painting method looked effortless on television, but behind the scenes, each episode was carefully prepared. He used a wet-on-wet technique, painting directly onto a wet base layer, so nothing needed to dry. This allowed colors to blend easily and scenes to develop quickly. Bob kept his tools simple, using only a small selection of brushes, knives, and colors to avoid overwhelming beginners. For every episode, Bob actually painted 3 versions of the same artwork. One was created before filming as a guide, one was painted live on camera, and a third was made afterward for instructional books. Each painting was marked differently, showing how organized and deliberate the process really was. Although Bob appeared spontaneous, nothing was careless. This balance between preparation and freedom made his teaching effective. He also developed a recognizable style, from his clothing to his phrases. He wore simple jeans and a plain shirt to remain timeless. He spoke as if talking to one person rather than a large audience. His famous sayings, such as "happy little trees" and "happy accidents," became part of popular culture. Bob's landscapes often showed mountains, lakes, forests, and quiet cabins, usually without people. He rarely painted signs of modern life, choosing instead to create peaceful worlds where viewers could escape. Research later showed repeated patterns in his work, but these repetitions brought comfort rather than boredom. Viewers found reassurance in familiarity. Bob Ross created not just paintings, but a feeling of safety. This emotional connection became the foundation of his lasting legacy. As Bob Ross's popularity grew, he began appearing outside his painting show. He made guest appearances on talk shows, demonstrated painting live for audiences, and even appeared on MTV in promotional segments that connected with younger viewers. Despite this visibility, Bob remained deeply private. He married 3 times and had 2 children, including his son Steve, who became a skilled painter and appeared on the show. Steve was certified as an instructor and shared several on-screen moments with his father. However, Bob's personal life included pain and loss. His first marriage ended in divorce, reportedly due to infidelity. His second wife, Jane, died of cancer in 1992. Just 2 months before his own death, Bob married for the 3rd time. Throughout his life, Bob avoided interviews and kept emotional distance from fame. Spiritually, he believed in God but did not follow organized religion. He often ended episodes with a simple blessing, reflecting quiet faith rather than public devotion. While millions felt they knew Bob Ross personally, he carefully protected his inner world. This privacy made what happened after his death even more shocking to fans who believed the story ended peacefully. Bob Ross smoked for much of his life and struggled with health issues. He believed he would die young, a belief that sadly proved accurate. Years before his death, he was diagnosed with lymphoma, a fact he kept private. Even while ill, Bob continued working, preparing paintings for future seasons of the joy of painting. Bob Ross passed away on July 4th, 1995, at the age of 52. His death shocked fans, as few knew he was sick. He was buried in Florida under a simple plaque identifying him as a television artist. Almost immediately, business consequences followed. Under the original partnership agreement, ownership of Bob Ross Incorporated shifted after the deaths of Bob and his wife Jane. This resulted in the Kowalski family gaining control of the company. Conflict soon followed. Bob had rewritten his will to leave his estate to his son Steve and half-brother, removing the Kowalskis. However, legal challenges argued that most of Bob's work was created as work for hire, giving the company ownership. The courts ultimately ruled in favor of the company, transferring control of Bob's name and likeness. This decision reshaped his legacy overnight and left his family without control of the image the world loved. After legal control was secured, Bob Ross Incorporated expanded rapidly. Merchandise featuring Bob's image spread across the world. While some fans enjoyed seeing Bob remembered, others felt uncomfortable with the heavy commercialization. Steve Ross later stated that legal pressure discouraged him from painting publicly for years. Eventually, a settlement allowed him to continue his career. Meanwhile, Bob Ross's image appeared in movies, television shows, video games, and pop culture references. His face became both a tribute and a product. The release of documentaries examining the business side of his legacy sparked debate. Many fans questioned whether Bob would have approved of how his image was used. At the same time, his influence continued to grow. His calm presence helped people during stressful times, including global lockdowns, when reruns of the show provided comfort to millions. Bob Ross became more than an artist. He became a symbol of peace in a noisy world. Today, Bob Ross remains one of the most beloved figures in modern culture. His paintings, words, and gentle presence continue to inspire new generations. Digital platforms introduced him to younger audiences who found comfort in his calm voice. Museums, streaming services, and online communities celebrate his work. Despite the legal battles and business controversies, Bob Ross's true legacy lives in the feeling he created. He showed people that creativity did not require perfection, that mistakes could be transformed into beauty, and that kindness could exist even in competitive spaces. While others may control his name, they cannot control the impact he had on millions of lives. Bob Ross taught the world that peace could be painted, one quiet brushstroke at a time. Even decades after Bob Ross passed away, one question continues to quietly follow his legacy. Where are all the paintings? By Bob's own estimate, he completed more than 30,000 works during his lifetime, yet only a small number are publicly displayed, sold, or even photographed. This mystery has fueled endless curiosity among fans. Many believe that thousands of Bob Ross paintings remain stored away, unseen by the public, protected by the company that controls his estate. While no single dramatic vault opening moment has ever been officially revealed, the truth is more subtle and, in many ways, more emotional. Bob Ross Incorporated retained ownership of most paintings created during the filming of The Joy of Painting. These works were not meant for sale. They were tools for teaching, practice pieces, or reference works. Bob himself did not see his paintings as rare treasures. To him, they were moments of calm, created and then moved on from. However, once Bob was gone, those same paintings became valuable not just in money, but in meaning. Fans wanted to see them. Museums wanted to display them, and collectors wanted to own a piece of that calm world Bob created. Over time, some paintings were shown in limited exhibits, often surprising viewers who had never seen an original Bob Ross up close. People expected something ordinary, but instead felt something deeply familiar, like meeting an old friend for the first time. Each painting carried the same softness seen on television, but also showed details that cameras never captured. Brush textures, color layers, and small choices revealed how thoughtful Bob truly was. Still, most of his work remains out of reach. This has led to frustration for fans who feel that Bob's art belongs to the public spirit, not locked away by legal control. The mystery surrounding his paintings is not about secrets or scandals, but about access. People want to connect more deeply with a man who helped them through lonely nights, stressful years, and difficult moments. They want to see the physical proof of the calm he created. In that sense, the real discovery fans are still waiting for is not a single storage unit being opened, but a future where Bob Ross's full-body work can be shared openly, in a way that reflects his values rather than pure business interests. Until then, the mystery continues quietly. Just like Bob would prefer to die in a world that has become louder, faster, and more demanding with each passing year, the continued importance of Bob Ross feels almost surprising, yet deeply necessary. Long after his death, people who never lived during the original airing of The Joy of Painting are discovering him for the first time through digital platforms. Young viewers, raised on fast cuts and high-energy content, often find themselves unexpectedly drawn to his slow pace and gentle presence. There is something rare about a man who never tried to impress, never rushed, and never demanded attention, yet managed to hold it completely. Bob Ross matters today because he represents an alternative way of living, one where patience is valued and mistakes are welcomed rather than punished. His message feels especially powerful in modern times, when perfection is often expected and failure is shared publicly. Bob taught that errors could be transformed, that pressure was unnecessary, and that creativity belonged to everyone. These lessons go far beyond painting. They speak to mental health, self-acceptance, and resilience. Many people have shared stories of watching Bob Ross during moments of grief, anxiety, or loneliness, finding comfort simply in his voice and manner. He did not promise solutions or happiness, but he offered calm, and sometimes that was enough. His influence can be seen in classrooms, therapy settings, and creative communities that use art as a tool for healing. Even institutions that once overlooked him now recognize his cultural importance. Museums have begun to acknowledge Bob Ross not only as a television personality, but as an artist who reshaped how people engage with creativity. His work sits in a unique space between fine art and emotional experience. Critics may argue that his paintings are repetitive or simple, but that simplicity is exactly why they work. Bob Ross removed fear from art. He gave permission to try without judgment. This approach has influenced countless teachers, creators, and educators who now focus on encouragement rather than criticism. Despite the ongoing debates over who controls his image and artwork, Bob Ross's true legacy cannot be owned or restricted. It exists in the millions of people who picked up a brush for the first time because he made them believe they could. It exists in the quiet moments where someone finds peace watching paint slowly become a mountain, a tree, or a lake. In the end, Bob Ross still matters because he reminds the world that kindness, patience, and creativity do not need to be loud to be powerful. His legacy continues not through contracts or merchandise, but through calm moments shared between a man, a canvas, and anyone willing to slow down and listen. Point where the most powerful parts of Bob Ross's legacy is not found in paint, television ratings, or business records, but an emotional bond he formed with his audience. This connection was unusual, especially for a public figure. Bob did not speak like a performer or celebrity. He spoke like a friend sitting quietly beside you. His tone was slow, his words were gentle, and his presence felt personal. Many viewers have said that watching Bob Ross felt less like watching a show and more like spending time with someone who cared. He never talked down to his audience or made them feel inexperienced. Instead, he treated everyone as capable, creative, and worthy of patience. This approach created trust. Over time, viewers did not just learn how to paint trees or clouds. They learned how to relax, how to breathe, and how to be kinder to themselves. For people dealing with anxiety, depression, or loneliness, Bob's show became a safe space. Some watched him late at night, when the world felt overwhelming. Others turned to him during illness or grief, when loud entertainment felt unbearable. Bob never knew most of these people personally, yet his impact on their lives was real and lasting. Letters poured in during the show's original run, with viewers thanking him not just for teaching art, but for giving them peace. This emotional connection grew even stronger after his death. As reruns continued to air and new platforms introduced him to younger audiences, Bob Ross became a symbol of comfort across generations. Parents shared episodes with their children. Teachers played his show in classrooms. Therapists recommended his videos as a calming tool. Few television figures have crossed so many boundaries without changing their message. Bob's consistency was key. He never chased trends or altered his style to remain relevant. Instead, the world slowly caught up to what he'd been offering all along. Even today, when fans talk about Bob Ross, they rarely mention money, fame, or business success. They talk about how he made them feel. That emotional bond explains why debates about his legacy are so intense. People feel protective of Bob because they feel they knew him. While legal documents may define ownership, they cannot measure emotional impact. Bob Ross belongs to the memories of those who found calm through him. That bond, built quietly and honestly, is perhaps his greatest achievement and the reason his presence continues to feel alive. Even decades after his final brushstroke, Bob Ross's popularity continues to grow long after his death. An ongoing debate remains at the center of his legacy. Who truly owns Bob Ross, and more importantly, who understands his intent? On paper, legal rulings clearly state that Bob Ross Incorporated controls his name, likeness, and much of his artwork. From a business standpoint, this is settled. But emotionally and morally, many fans feel the issue is far more complicated. Bob Ross spent his life encouraging people to create freely, without pressure, competition, or fear of failure. He avoided luxury, rarely spoke about money, and showed little interest in building wealth for its own sake. Because of this, some fans struggle to accept how heavily his image has been commercialized since his passing. Seeing his face on mass-produced products, novelty items, and marketing campaigns creates a sharp contrast with a man who taught simplicity and calm. Supporters of the company argue that expansion has helped keep Bob Ross relevant, introducing him to new audiences who might never have discovered his work otherwise. In that sense, merchandising and media presence have preserved his memory rather than erased it. Critics, however, worry that the spirit of Bob Ross has been diluted, reduced to a symbol rather than a teacher. They question whether Bob would want his image used so widely, especially in ways disconnected from education or creativity. This debate intensified after documentaries and interviews revealed how little control Bob's own family had over his legacy. For many viewers, this felt deeply unfair, especially knowing how private Bob was and how much he valued family and personal boundaries. The situation forces a larger conversation about how society treats cultural figures after death. When someone becomes beloved by millions, does their legacy belong to corporations, courts, or the public who kept it alive? Bob Ross's case highlights the tension between legal rights and emotional ownership. While laws determine control, intent is harder to measure. Bob's intent seemed clear in his work: to reduce fear, to encourage creativity, and to create calm. Whether every modern use of his image aligns with that intent is something fans continue to debate. What remains certain is that Bob Ross never asked to be a brand. He asked people to pick up a brush, take a deep breath, and believe in themselves. As long as that message survives, many feel his true legacy remains intact, even if its management continues to raise difficult questions. Beyond the paintings, television episodes, and legal debates, Bob Ross left behind a set of quiet lessons that continue to shape how people think about creativity and life itself. These lessons were never spoken as rules or instructions. Instead, they were shown gently through example. Bob taught that learning should feel safe, not stressful. He showed that growth comes from patience rather than pressure. When a brush slipped or a color went wrong, he did not erase or restart. He adapted. This simple act carried a powerful message. Mistakes are not something to fear, but opportunities to create something new. In a world that often demands perfection, this lesson remains deeply relevant. Bob also taught the importance of slowing down. His show moved at a pace that felt almost rebellious, even during the original broadcast. Today, that slow pace feels even more meaningful. By refusing to rush, Bob invited viewers to be present. He reminded people that not every moment needs to be productive or efficient. Sometimes, peace itself is the goal. Another lesson Bob left behind was kindness without expectation. He never mocked beginners, never acted superior, and never treated knowledge as power over others. His teaching style was based on encouragement, not authority. This approach influenced not only artists, but educators, parents, and mentors across many fields. Bob showed that respect creates confidence, and confidence leads to growth. He also demonstrated that it is possible to change who you are. The calm man the world loved was once a strict military sergeant who shouted orders for a living. Bob chose to become gentle. That choice is one of the most powerful parts of his story. It proves that people are not locked into a single identity. They can decide to be softer, kinder, and more patient.